The Philadelphia Eagles had 10 days to prepare for that game against the Las Vegas Raiders. They get absolutely dominated, falling to 2-5, their worst start since 1999. We'll talk about it all. Roll the intro.
This is the Legal Hands to the Face podcast with Bill Colarulo.
Hey everybody, Bill Colarulo back with another Legal Hands to the Face podcast. The final score yesterday, Raiders 33, Eagles 22. Doesn't even begin to tell the story about how badly the Philadelphia Eagles were dominated by the Las Vegas Raiders yesterday. They had 10 days to prepare, and they were going up against a team that has had so much off-the-field drama since the John Gruden news broke. He has to step down as the head coach. They're going through all of this turmoil. They have their special teams coach as their interim head coach. You would think this would have been a great time for the Eagles to steal a game. Vegas Stadium packed with Eagles fans who made the trip, but it was an embarrassment. After the Eagles come out and put up the first touchdown of the game to go up 7-0, the Raiders score 30 unanswered points. It was an absolute embarrassment. From the coaching staff to the players to the scouts to the GM, just an embarrassment. I want to talk a little bit about our head coach, Nick Sirianni. From all accounts, seems like he's a good guy. Seems like he's a good dude. I've been rooting for this guy from when he was hired up until now. I want to see him succeed, but I'm at the point where I just don't think he can be a head coach in the NFL. His decision-making during games is just so bad, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. But it's also their game planning. You had 10 days to prepare for this game. 10 days. And yet he comes in with the same game plans, the same play calls. There just seems to be absolutely no rhythm to this offense. There's no strategy involved. It's the same thing week after week after week. Some of his decision-making during the games is just scary. Let's first look at what was an absolute shocker. First quarter, Raiders have the ball. It's third down. Eagles make a big stop to make it 4th and 2. The Raiders punt team is coming onto the field to punt the ball back to the Eagles. But there was a holding call against the Raiders. The referee assumes the Eagles are going to decline the penalty because anyone who's ever watched football in their entire life knows you decline that penalty because they're punting the ball anyway. But Nick Sirianni, for whatever reason, accepts the penalty, makes it a 3rd and 13, gives the Raiders offense another chance to try to convert on a first down, and they do it. It was mind-boggling. Merrill Reese on the radio broadcast was shocked. The broadcasters during the Fox 29 broadcast were shocked. The referees were shocked. This is not rocket science here. You know, it's very easy to sit here as Monday morning quarterback and look back at some of the coach's decisions and say, hey, he shouldn't have done this, he shouldn't have done that. But these are simple decisions. These are decisions that high school football coaches can make, that Nick Sirianni is blowing. We've also talked about being appropriately aggressive. There is a time to be aggressive and there's a time not to be aggressive. A decision he made in the first quarter, it's 4th and 1 on your own 35-yard line. The score is 7-7. You're still in this game. He decides to go for it on 4th and 1 from his own 35-yard line in the first quarter of that game. Why? Now they convert the first down. They have a couple more plays, and then they end up punting the ball away. But what does that do for you? The risk-reward there just doesn't make sense to me. Great, so you pick up the first down. What happens? Nothing. You get a couple more plays in, and then you have to punt the ball anyway. It wasn't as if you needed the momentum there. It wasn't as if the Raiders were dominating you yet that you needed to do something to spark your team. No, this is a game. This is a 7-7 game. The only thing that could happen there is a negative. You get stopped on 4th and 1 and you give the ball to the Raiders at the 35, you're basically giving them points. I did not like that decision at all. Then he comes out to start the second half with an onside kick. Whether or not you agree with it, again, it's picking your times to be aggressive. it almost appears to me that Nick Sirianni has no rhyme or reason for what he's doing. He's trying to figure it out on the fly. There's no game plan. There's no preparation. It's extremely frustrating watching this offense just falter time and time again. Then looking at the flip side, Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator of our defense. My God, was that a bad performance by the defense yesterday. And I just want to show you some drives that the Las Vegas Raiders were able to put together. They had drives of 11 for 86 yards, 9 for 72 yards, 10 for 96 yards, 6 for 56 yards, and 7 for 50 yards. All of those resulting in points for the Raiders. They went on that 30-0 run. And the reason why is because Jonathan Gannon plays a defense which is almost a scaredy cat type of defense, a bend but don't break type of defense. They don't blitz. They keep both safeties high so that they cannot get beat with a big play. But what if we keep seeing week after week after week these good quarterbacks? Fine. You don't want to give us the big play? We're going to methodically drive down the field, completing our passes, and we're going to score touchdowns every single time. There was a crazy stat that Reuben Frank of NBC Sports Philly put up last night. And listen to this one. In the first 1,285 games that the Philadelphia Eagles have been in existence, they only allowed 8 quarterbacks to have an over 80% completion rate. In 1,285 games, 8 quarterbacks over 80% completion rate. In the last 5 games, they've let 4 quarterbacks have an 80% completion rate. Do you realize the insanity of that stat? Yesterday, Derek Carr was 31 of 34 for a 91% completion rate. Those are historic numbers. This is a historically bad defensive scheme. And the worst part of it is he doesn't make any adjustments during the game. There are 0 adjustments being made. They're keeping their safeties high. They're not blitzing. They're not causing any pressure. And they're allowing these upper echelon quarterbacks to just pick apart the defense with ease. In the last 5 games, the Eagles defense has given up 34 points, 42, 18, 28, and 33. And that game where they only gave up 18 was against Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers. Against the good quarterbacks, they're giving up close to 30 points a game. It's embarrassing. And what's even worse here is I think Jonathan Gannon and this coaching staff are starting to lose the players. If you watched the post-game conference yesterday, Fletcher Cox, a guy who's a leader in that locker room, who very, very rarely throws his coaches under the bus or throws other players under the bus. This is a guy who's always been, keep it in-house, keep it in the locker room, we'll handle things ourselves. Came out yesterday, very telling, and started making comments about the defensive scheme, that he is not used to playing in a scheme that's this unaggressive, that he's used to a more aggressive scheme, that he just has to play where the coaches put him. It's not his job to talk to the coaches about the scheme. So you can tell that he's not happy with whatever Jonathan Gannon's doing. What was also telling is that Nick Sirianni in his press conference starts throwing Jonathan Gannon under the bus multiple occasions. So you're already starting to see some friction in this locker room. But that's the coaches. You can't let the players off the hook here either. Howie Roseman, we've talked about it in the past, has not done a good job of putting this team together. There's a lot of holes. But let's talk about some of these players here. One of the things that's been shocking to me on this defense is the defensive line. The defensive line was supposed to be the strength of this team. It was going to carry this defense. It was going to carry this team throughout the season. They had 0 sacks yesterday. 0 sacks on Carr. And through the first now 7 games of the year, the Eagles have the 6th least amount of sacks in the entire NFL. With that defensive line, you have all this money on that defensive line. You just gave Josh Sweat a huge contract. You still have Fletcher Cox. You have Hargrave. You have first-round pick Derek Barnett, who really looks like he's a bust at this point. You have Ryan Kerrigan, who you don't even hear his name during the broadcast, but they are the 6th least amount of sacks, and they've given up the 3rd most rushing yards through the first 7 games of this season. That is just bad. This is a defensive line that should be playing better. Now, what is that? Who do you blame there? Is it the players? Is it the coaching staff? Is it the scheme that Jonathan Gannon's playing? It's probably a combination of everything. But that defensive line has been very, very bad. And then you look at what else this defense needs. The linebackers, not good enough. The safeties, definitely not good enough. Your corners, they aren't horrible. Your corners aren't playing that badly. But when you're asking your corners and you're asking your secondary to just stay in this deep zone, it allows these quarterbacks who are any good to just pick you apart. But you got to be able to put pressure with your D-line and your linebackers, and they're just not doing it. Then you go to the flip side, the offense. Talk about those players. Your offensive line really didn't play well yesterday. Lane Johnson is back. We finally found out what was going on with him. We wish him the best. He was having some depression issues, anxiety issues, mental health issues, which we know are real. We wish him the best. So he comes back yesterday, which allows you to move Jordan Mailata back to his natural position of left tackle. You think you're going to be able to have a really good game on that offensive line. Unfortunately, Jalen Hurts was under way too much pressure. They gave up 2 sacks yesterday, but really just never got into a rhythm. And again, you don't know what can be blamed on the players versus what is just a horrible, horrible scheme by these coaches. But that offensive line needs to get better. As we look to the future, because really now at 2-5, we may just need to be looking towards the future. What do we have on that offensive line? Jason Kelce, how many more years do we have him? Lane Johnson, one, he's already getting older, and now we have these other issues to worry about. Brandon Brooks is still hurt. What do you have? Obviously, Jordan Mailata, nice young talent. You hope Landon Dickerson, nice young talent. But both of those guys struggled yesterday. So what do we have in this offensive line going forward? It's something they really need to figure out over the next few weeks. Then you look at our skilled position players. I actually think our skilled position players are pretty good. On the wide receiver room, you have Devontae Smith. He looked good yesterday. Yeah, they kept saying he dropped 3 passes. Those were tough catches. Jalen Hurts wasn't doing him any favors in where he was putting that ball. But you got Devontae Smith, looks good. Quez Watkins, another big play yesterday. He looks good. Jalen Reagor, so hot and cold, had a really nice touchdown catch towards the end of the game yesterday, but you're not seeing enough out of him. But ultimately, your receiving core is probably good enough. Then your running backs. Miles Sanders, unfortunately, goes down yesterday with an ankle injury. Hopefully, he can get healthy and he can get back soon because he looked good right before that. And anytime he touches the ball, the guy looks good. He just hasn't had enough opportunities. But your running backs look good. Kenny Gainwell, nice young talent. Boston Scott, not a bad third running back to have. So your running back room looks pretty good. Tight end, recently traded Zach Ertz, which opens up the door for Dallas Goedert to hopefully step up. Real quick shout out to Zach Ertz. If anybody saw what a great touchdown catch he has in his first game with the Arizona Cardinals. What's crazy is it was actually the longest touchdown catch of his career. So with all the success he had in Philadelphia, his first game in Arizona, he has the longest touchdown catch of his career. But wish him the best. Like to see him do some things with that Arizona Cardinals team. But you have Dallas Goedert. He had a good game yesterday also. So it looks like some of the young skill players on this offense are pretty good, something to maybe get excited about. But then we look at our quarterback. Really, I wanted this whole season to be about figuring out whether or not we have a franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And the question is still there. You just don't know. You see flashes of it. Obviously, he has the intangibles of being a leader and a fighter, and he never gives up. But sometimes he can make those throws that are, man, that's a franchise quarterback. And then other times you're left scratching your head. But I still would love to see what this guy can do with a real offensive coach who puts a real game plan in place. That's a good play caller. If you watch that Colts game last night, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our Wentz Watch later, but you saw what we loved so much about Frank Reich and his ability to call plays. His play calling is just so good. It doesn't allow the defense to figure out what's going on. You're constantly keeping them on their toes. You don't know what's coming next. With Jalen Hurts and this offense, unfortunately, they're so predictable, it's very difficult to judge what do we have in Jalen Hurts. Now, he's definitely missing too many throws. There's no doubt about it. He's got to get better. But you've seen that arm strength. He had a couple of nice passes yesterday, one to Devontae Smith, who made a great catch on the sidelines there. Great pass. Another one to Dallas Goedert, where he ran an up and out. Beautiful pass, a lot of zip on the ball, put it right where it needed to be. So he has the ability to make these tough throws. You just want to see it more consistently. But again, how much is that of coaching and not allowing these guys to get into a rhythm? So we will see what we have here. But, it's going to be important that these guys start to figure out what players can play for this team. Because as you drop to 2-5, what's the future looking like? Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys are head and shoulders above the Eagles this year. They already have a great record. They were on a bye last week, but they're one of the best teams in the NFC, if not in the NFL. The chances of the Eagles being able to turn this around and make the playoffs is going to be slim. So what we have to do is really start to look forward to 2022. Do we have the players that we need in certain positions? Because there's a very, very strong chance that this Eagles team is going to have 3 first-round draft picks. And that's a good opportunity. Let's go to our Wentz watch yesterday. Carson Wentz looks healthy. Played pretty well last night against the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. They win the game. Carson Wentz plays another 100% of the snaps. You hope the Colts don't make the playoffs. If the Colts don't make the playoffs, but Wentz plays over 75% of the snaps, the Eagles will get the Colts' first-round pick, which looks like right now is going to be a top 20 pick. Now, Wentz played well last night. He did enough for them to win, but he still made those decisions that frustrated you so much as an Eagles fan. They're down in the red zone last night. He scrambles. He tries to keep the play alive. It's first down. Just throw the ball away, live to play another down. What does he do? He tries to do something stupid where he flips the ball, gets intercepted. Those were the type of turnovers that Carson Wentz did time and time again that makes me happy he's not here. Okay, but he's playing 75% of the snaps, it looks like, this year. That'll be a first-round pick. The Eagles have their own first-round pick. At this point, it looks like it's going to be a top 10 pick, maybe even worse as we look at the weeks ahead. And then the Dolphins. What a first-round pick that may turn out to be. They lose again yesterday, dropping their record to 1-6. They've lost to the Jaguars. That team does not look like it's a good team. That could end up being a top 5 pick. So you're going to have 3 first-round draft picks next year, 2 of them in the top 10 most likely, 1 of them in the top 5, maybe in the top 3 most likely. So you need to figure out, what do we have in Jalen Hurts, what do we have in these young players, and where can we help rebuild this team? Because right now things look really, really bad. And curious to hear your guys' thoughts. If you're watching along on Facebook or YouTube, I want to hear your thoughts on Nick Sirianni, on Jonathan Gannon, and really, is it time for us to just start looking to the future, seeing what we have, and what do you think the Eagles should do? If they have 3 first-round draft picks next year, should they package that to get a franchise quarterback, or have you seen enough of Jalen Hurts that you think he can be the guy? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But as we look ahead at next week, the Eagles hopefully are catching a break here. They have the 0-7 Detroit Lions ahead of us. But at this point, there is no game that is a guaranteed win for this Eagles team and this Eagles organization. So even though the Lions are 0-7, they cannot look past this team. The Eagles should never look past anybody with a 2-5 record the way they've been playing. But the Eagles should beat the Lions. The Lions are not a good team. They've allowed the 10th most rushing yards in the league. They've allowed the 7th most passing yards in the league. So you would hope to see this Eagles offense, if Nick Sirianni can game plan properly, put up some points this week. But one of the things they have to be ready for is, if anyone watched the Red Zone this weekend, the Detroit Lions played the Los Angeles Rams, and they pulled out every single trick in the book. The Lions ran an onside kick, and they did 2 fake punts in the same game. They are trying everything. Dan Campbell, their head coach, he's a first-year head coach. They're 0-7. What do they have to lose at this point? He's trying everything. So the Eagles better be prepared for onside kicks, fake punts, fake field goals, trick plays, because the Lions are going to pull it all out to try to win their first game. The Eagles better be ready. And when you look past the Lions, which the Eagles shouldn't do, but will do, There's a lot of winnable games coming up in the back part of this schedule. We knew the beginning of this schedule was going to be tough. They had to play Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and Carr. And we knew there was going to be hard. Dak Prescott. We knew it was going to be tough. But now there's a lot of winnable games coming up. Now with this Eagles team, every game is also losable. We know that. But there's a lot of winnable games. Let's hope they can maybe put some things together to start stringing along some wins. Because if things continue to go south, you can already hear it in the way the players are talking in their post-game press conferences. This coaching staff is losing this team, and this could be a very, very long season. So we will see. My prediction is I think they beat the Lions. I can't imagine them losing to the Lions, this 0-7 team. I think Jalen Hurts will do enough next week to hopefully put the team on his back and win this game. But the defense has to be better. They have to put pressure. You got to call up more blitzes. Your skilled players aren't good enough on defense to just sit back and hope that the quarterbacks make mistakes. They're not. They're not making mistakes. They're driving down the field. Put some pressure, force them to make mistakes. But if you're a Philadelphia fan, I guess some silver lining that we can take is at least our Sixers and our Flyers look pretty good. The Sixers are 2-1. They have all that Ben Simmons drama going on, but in some ways it's almost made this team closer. Joel Embiid is really being a strong leader this year. There's some other young players that I'm excited about on that Sixers team. 2-1. They have a big win last night against Oklahoma City. Let's hope they can keep it up. And then my Flyers, man. The Flyers look good. 2-1-1. They've scored 18 goals in 4 games. They made a lot of changes in the offseason, bringing in some new players. And you look at some of the new players they brought in. Atkinson, Broussard, Yandel, Ellis. All those guys have 5 points, and Ellis has 4 points in only 4 games. So they are producing, and you can get real excited about Joel Farabee. Young player, came on strong last year, is having a great start to this season, already 6 points in 4 games. So I'm excited about that Flyers team. I'm excited about the Sixers season, and we may need it because this Eagles season may be a long one. So curious to hear all your guys' thoughts, and if you're not following along, be sure to follow Legal Hands to the Face podcast. We're on all your favorite podcast platforms, Facebook, also YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. So check us out. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to keep the content coming. Go Birds!